Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, and I'm joined by Brantley Sanderson. We're going to talk some Lady Rebels basketball in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about the Grove Collective starting their March to Victory campaign. It's a bracket-style, March Madness-style tournament that pits regions of the country in competition with other regions for who can donate to the NIL Collective the most. You can go to the website at thegrovecollective.com/March to Victory. There's promo codes there. You can see which states to get there, and you can make sure the right state gets the right credit. But the goal is $10 million and 10 million total members by the end of March. So there's a lot of stuff for good stuff for Walker Jones and the Grove Collective. Anyway, Brantley Sanderson's here. The Lady Rebels are getting ready tomorrow to start their NCAA or their SEC tournament run. How we doing, Brantley?
Man, I am so fired up. It's just a really good way the team ended the season. And I feel like they're riding a lot of momentum. So I'm really excited to see how this weekend plays out.
Yeah, they got to the point where they were just destroying teams at the end of the year. And honestly, I feel bad for Vanderbilt coming up tomorrow because of what could happen there. But there's so many different things in this SEC tournament. For Ole Miss to win, they only need to win 3 games because they got the double bye. But those 3 games, you have to get through the first one, which is likely Vanderbilt. Then you have LSU, likely, and then you have likely South Carolina. So it's a hard 3 games and potentially the hardest 3 games that you can just about have, but it still is a little bit easier than the alternative.
Yeah, I mean, it's you always want that double bye. You get that extra day of rest. I know the players probably need it right now. But I'm feeling really optimistic. We played Vandy at Vandy earlier this year, and they're a really good team. I don't want to take anything away from them, but like you said, if we show up, we should win this game. And if that leads us to a rematch with LSU, call me crazy, but I feel really good about our chances there. I mean, we are a very different team than when we played them at home, and that was a pretty close game. They didn't pull away from us until the very end. And it's March, anything can happen. I was actually at the SEC tournament a couple of years ago when Kentucky went on a run and they upset South Carolina at the buzzer to win the championship. So, maybe it's our time this year. There's always a team, there's always a player that steps up and surprises people and gets folks' attention. And I think we've got as good a chance as anyone else to do that this year.
And you mentioned player Madison Scott has announced that she is returning next season to Ole Miss, which that's a boon for Coach Yo and the Lady Rebels basketball team because she is pretty much the best player on the roster as far as the most talented player. So you can build around her again. Do you have a situation of players that might need to, we know Marquisha Davis, we know Madison Scott, they're always going to be there. And, Todd Williams is going to be there as well. What kind of surprise players do you look for Ole Miss if they want to make a run in this SEC tournament?
Yeah, I think one thing that surprised me recently in these last few games, and we've done so well, is the emergence of the second team. She really has a full, set of 5 players now. She subbed them in and out wholesale a couple of times. And they've really stepped up. It's I think 2 or 3 freshmen in that group, and some bench players who also have some experience. So I'm really looking at them now. I don't know if all 10 of them, we need all 10 of them to step up, but we need at least 3 people coming off of the bench. Because, if you're going to make that run here in March, Madison Scott can't play 40 minutes a game, but 3 days in a row. So I'm really looking at one of the post players to come off the bench and give us some production. Hopefully, Carissa Richardson, who she's the player who went off for, I think, 20 points against Tennessee and was a huge reason why we beat them. But also we need a guard to come off. And I think, someone who's really surprised me lately has been Alana Eaton. She's a senior. She hasn't played very much this year, but ever since she stepped on campus, she's been nailing threes. And she's a big guard. She's got experience, and that's really what you need this time of year. So I think if a couple of them can really come on strong and give some of our starters some rest, that's going to give us, a big edge over some of the, because LSU doesn't have that depth. Vanderbilt doesn't have that depth. The only people who have more depth is South Carolina, and we can deal with them in the championship game. But until then, I think we just need a couple of people to step up in the way they have over the past couple of weeks.
So, what do you think the outlook is for this team moving forward?
That's a good question. I think you mentioned Maddie coming back for a 5th year. Like that is a huge boon to this team, not just for now, but obviously, for the momentum that they can carry into the offseason and into the transfer portal. But I think this is their time to say, like, we're here to stay. This wasn't some flash in a pan when we beat Stanford last year. We didn't just get lucky, didn't go to the Sweet 16, but this is a true program. I was thinking earlier this morning, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this, but I see a lot of parallels between what Coach Joe is doing and what Lane Kiffin has done. They have really took their time to build a program, and we're seeing the results of that after, 4 and 5 years. I don't think there's ever been a brighter future for the Ole Miss women's basketball team than right now.
Yeah, and honestly, if we're going to be real about it, I love everybody that's listening to my show. If you're an everydayer and tune in, you know how I feel about what Lane Kiffin's done at Ole Miss. But Coach Yo, coming from where she came from, is honestly a little bit more impressive for the attention that she needed to get, because I was at Ole Miss when I was there. They had just hired like Adrian Wiggins, and then all of that scandal happened, and then they hired Insel, and he couldn't quite do what his dad did at Middle Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And Ole Miss basketball was in a really, really dark, bad spot when Coach Yo took over. And she has been brick by brick from the very first brick building up this program. And now the fruits of that labor is starting to be shown.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, she reminded us the other day in a press conference, she had to start a manager her second year. I think that was the season when we scored 2 points against South Carolina at halftime.
I will never forget that. I'm not even a huge women's basketball fan and following, and especially during that time frame. But when I saw that score, I mean, that was a situation where my heart just sunk. And it's like, what is going on? Because Van Chancellor and the Lady Rebs used to be a pretty proud program. And then you come and you see that, and that was kind of like a major wake-up call. And you see what she's done from that point on. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I was following all of those games at that time. And I think I had watched every game, or at least every SEC game since she's been here. And you just saw it, you didn't see it the second year, but every year after that, she added piece by piece by piece until now she's got a full buffet of options to choose from. And another thing, just kind of hitting on what you said about the history, something that she's done that I think maybe some other coaches didn't is she has really embraced that past and that history. And she's not there's a very strong history of former players being coaches, from Carol Ross to Coach Gillum to Renee Ladner. And I think she's just, so obviously she didn't come from that line, but she has celebrated them. She's pulled them in. And she's really built a camaraderie, I think, and reminded us of that proud heritage and just how strong of a program that we all come from. So just to see her kind of take that into the future in her own way, in the way that Lane's done, they're very similar coaches. And the bottom line is people want to play for them. Mm-hmm. So, when you have a player like Madison Scott coming back for a 5th year, you've got a player like Snutta Collins, who's, homegrown. This will be her. She's already announced she's coming back for a 5th year, I believe, as well. And not to mention Kennedy Todd Williams. That's a very appealing group of people to go and pull a couple of pieces into heading into the offseason. So I'm telling you, there's a lot in front of this program. I think this is, we can look back on this period of time as a true defining moment in Yo's legacy that she's leaving right now. and where this program is going to go beyond what we've seen so far.
Yeah, and what Lane Kiffin did going into the 2024 season, they went all in the transfer portal because they had those pieces coming back, and they realized that if they had the right one, they could make a real run at a national title. Coach Yo is going to be in a similar type situation to where if she can go into the transfer portal, get 2 or 3 major pieces, and this Lady Rebels basketball team could even take a step forward.
Oh yeah, I mean, Madison Scott is the Jackson Dart of this team, and there's going to be a lot of players that want to play with her because she has truly, stepped into her dominance lately. Like, she's on another level. It's almost impossible to guard her, and she loves defense. So I mean, she is the perfect player for Yo's system, and I'm just really happy to see her, where she's at right now.
So the NCAA tournament's coming up. What do we need to know going into the SEC tournament?
Well, I think we're playing for seeding. If we can make some noise and get a couple of wins under our belt here, especially over in LSU, that really vaults us up from that 7-8 line. And I've seen a couple of bracketologists have us there, which I don't agree with. But that helps tremendously in terms of who that second round matchup is. When you've got to go play. So, whoever it is will most likely be playing them on their home court. For folks who don't follow women's basketball as much as I do, first 2 rounds are the top 4 seeds host. So if you're a top 4 seed, you win your first game. The game to get to the Sweet 16 is going to be on your home court. So I think playing for that seeding is really big. But also, going back to what we were just talking about. Lane Kiffin did all of that because he had the resources. He was able to go out and get the Walter Nolan and get, all these other players to come in. And we need to step up as a fan base and give to NIL for women's basketball as well. If we want to see this kind of success sustained and we want to bring in those players to get us over the hump and to really vault us into elite status, then we need to put the resources behind it. And there is no other team that's more deserving of it than them right now.
Yeah, and Ole Miss sitting on that 8-9 line, this is something that is a real possibility. They probably aren't going to rematch them so quickly with LSU. They're probably not going to rematch them with South Carolina as far as in a second round matchup. I think there's a pretty good chance that Ole Miss is playing Caitlin Clark.
You look, I mean, it's going to be either a Caitlin Clark, it's going to be UConn, it's going to be some other power team, that's got that history and that brand. So it's going to be another big opportunity for us. And obviously, who knows what the first round is going to bring us. There's no bad team that makes it to the tournament. But it's a true statement. It can be a true defining statement of where we are and where we're going. If these ladies show up like they've been playing for the past few weeks. And I feel really good. One thing that I've always given Coach Yo her props on is she doesn't lose games that she's not supposed to lose. Her teams show up, they're prepared. And if they, when they fall short to the bigger teams, we're not getting blown out, by 20 and 30 points. So I'm feeling really good about it. And again, if we get that rematch with LSU on Saturday, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this team. So it's just a fun time to be an Ole Miss women's basketball fan right now.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Brantley Sanderson talking Lady Rebs basketball. Coach Yo getting ready for SEC tournament action. We'll talk to you next week, Brantley, as we're getting ready for the NCAA tournament.
Best time of the year, man. I'm excited for it.